Think about everything your body can do. It heals itself, fights off invisible invaders, and somehow keeps you alive through years of genuinely bad decisions and much worse sleep. Pretty remarkable, honestly. But here's the thing. Nobody tells you in biology class. Your body is also hauling around a bunch of evolutionary dead weight. Parts that made perfect sense 100,000 years ago, but now just take up space, quietly waiting to be phased out. 9 of them, to be exact. Some you've heard of. Some will genuinely surprise you. All of them are already on their way out. Number 9, the appendix. The appendix is basically the guy who shows up to every team meeting, sits in the back, and contributes absolutely nothing. It is a small pouch attached to your large intestine, and for most of human history, scientists genuinely were not sure what it was for. The leading theory is that it helped our ancestors digest a very different diet. We are talking leaves, bark, raw tubers, whatever they could pull out of the ground or strip off a tree. Back in the day, that kind of tough fibrous material needed serious digestive processing, and the appendix may have played a supporting role in breaking it all down. But then we started cooking food, softening it, processing it, and eventually just inventing smoothies. The appendix looked around, realized the job description had changed entirely, and has been quietly doing nothing ever since. What makes it especially interesting is that doctors can remove it completely, and you will never notice it is gone. No side effects, no compensating, no lifestyle adjustments required. In fact, in some human populations today, up to 1 in 5 people are born without an appendix at all. They are fine. They are more than fine. They never think about their appendix because they do not have one to think about. Scientists believe that over the next several thousand years, the appendix will simply stop showing up in more and more people until eventually the whole species moves on without it. Evolution does not send a memo. It just quietly stops ordering the part. Number 8, toes. Before you get defensive, yes, you use your toes. You use them to balance, to push off when you walk, and occasionally to pick things up off the floor when you cannot be bothered to bend down. The big toe in particular is genuinely essential to how humans walk and run. It handles the majority of the mechanical work during the push-off phase of every single step you take. The issue is everything next to it. The 4 smaller toes, and especially the pinky toe, are essentially passengers. They contribute almost nothing to locomotion, balance, or grip. Back in the day, when our ancestors were climbing trees and moving through rough terrain without shoes, strong, flexible toes that could grip and curl were actually critical survival tools. Every toe was pulling its weight. But modern humans wear shoes, basically from birth, walk on flat paved surfaces, and have very little need for the kind of active toe grip that our evolutionary ancestors depended on. Scientists think that over a very long time horizon, the smaller toes will gradually get shorter, less mobile, and less structurally developed. Not in your lifetime, not in your children's lifetime, but at some point far enough down the line, future humans may look at photographs of our feet and find the whole arrangement slightly baffling. 10 digits on the feet, most of them doing essentially nothing. It will seem extravagant. Number 7. The Jacobson's organ. Here is something that sounds like a rumor but is completely real. Humans have a pheromone detector built into our noses. It is called the vomeronasal organ, or the Jacobson's organ, and its entire job is to pick up on chemical signals, the kind of signals that animals use to communicate things like fertility, aggression, and territorial boundaries. In most mammals, this organ is active and genuinely useful. Cats use it constantly. Dogs, deer, horses, they all rely on it for social and reproductive signaling. In humans, it is basically a relic. Think of it as a spy gadget from a previous mission that nobody decommissioned properly. The hardware is still sitting there, but the batteries are dead. The software was never updated, and the warranty expired roughly 1 million years ago. As our ancestors evolved bigger brains and more complex social behavior, they started relying on vision and language to navigate the world. The subtle chemical messaging system became less critical. We learned to ask people out directly instead of sniffing the air, hopefully. Today, the Jacobson's organ in humans has no confirmed functional role. Some people are born without it entirely and report no difference in their social lives whatsoever. Even in those who do have it, it appears to connect to nothing useful. It is there in the same way an old landline phone jack is still in the wall of a modern apartment, technically present, connecting to absolutely nothing. Number 6. The erector pili muscle. You know that feeling when you step into cold air or hear something genuinely startling and your skin suddenly erupts in tiny bumps? Those goosebumps are your erector pili muscles contracting. And the reason that happens is one of the better examples of evolution running completely outdated code. Back in the day, our ancestors had significantly more body hair than we do now. When a threat appeared, a predator, a rival, a sudden drop in temperature, the erector pili would yank that hair upright across the entire body. On a fur-covered creature, this is actually an effective strategy. It makes the animal look larger, more intimidating, and better insulated all at once. A caveman suddenly bristling all over sent a clear message. This is not a good situation for either of us. The problem is that we lost most of the fur. We kept the erector pili muscles, we kept the reflex, and we kept the exact same neurological trigger. But we lost the only thing that made any of it useful. So now, when you get cold or scared, your skin dimples dramatically, and the effect on any nearby predators is approximately zero. Evolution has been slowly downgrading these muscles for thousands of years. They're getting smaller and less responsive with each passing generation. Who knows? A few hundred generations from now, your descendants might not get goosebumps at all. Just smooth, completely unbothered skin and absolutely no memory of why the system ever existed. Number 5. The tailbone. At the very bottom of your spine, just below the sacrum, sits a small curved cluster of fused vertebrae called the coccyx. You probably know it better as the tailbone. And yes, it is exactly what it sounds like. It is what remains of a tail. Our primate ancestors had actual functional tails, not decorative ones. Working tails used for balance while moving through trees, for communication with other members of the group, and almost certainly for basic coordination during fast movement. As our lineage evolved and we started spending more time upright on the ground, the tail became less useful and gradually shortened over millions of years. What you have now is the last remaining stub, a few fused vertebrae pointing gently downward, doing very little. It does serve as an attachment point for certain pelvic floor muscles and ligaments, so it is not completely without purpose. But it is not exactly pulling its weight either. The most dramatic evidence that the tailbone is a genuine evolutionary leftover is this. Very rarely, roughly 1 in every 100,000 births, a baby is born with a small fleshy growth extending from the base of the spine. It contains no bone. It is soft tissue and blood vessels, a vestigial tail in the most literal sense. Surgeons remove it shortly after birth without any functional consequence whatsoever. The body does not miss it. It was already not doing anything important. Your tailbone is essentially an architectural remnant, a load-bearing wall from a building that has since been completely redesigned around it. Number 4, the palmaris longus. Hold your arm out flat, palm facing up. Touch your pinky finger to your thumb and flex your wrist slightly upward. Do you see a tendon pop up in the middle of your forearm? That is the palmaris longus, or rather, that is it if you have one, because roughly 14% of people do not. They were born without it on one or both arms and have never noticed the difference, not once. That absence tells you almost everything you need to know about this muscle. Its official function is wrist flexion, which just means helping you bend your wrist forward. But your other forearm muscles already handle wrist flexion perfectly well. The palmaris longus is not contributing in any meaningful way. It is just taking up a small amount of space and doing its best impression of usefulness. Back in the day, when our ancestors were climbing and swinging through trees. A strong palmaris longus probably mattered quite a bit. It would have contributed to the gripping and pulling strength needed for that kind of movement. But unless you are planning to abandon modern life and take up living in the forest canopy, you genuinely do not need it anymore. What is interesting is that this useless little muscle has found an unexpected second career. Surgeons have started harvesting it for tendon reconstruction surgeries elsewhere in the body. If a patient needs a tendon replaced in their hand or wrist, the palmaris longus is an ideal donor. It can be removed entirely without causing any functional loss in the arm it came from. It is a spare part your body has been quietly carrying around your whole life, just waiting to be useful somewhere else. Number 3, wisdom teeth. They arrive late, uninvited, and almost always cause problems. Wisdom teeth, the third molars, typically erupt somewhere between the ages of 17 and 25, long after the rest of your teeth have already settled in and made themselves at home. By the time wisdom teeth show up, there is usually no space left for them, so they push. They crowd neighboring teeth, they grow in at odd angles, they get stuck halfway through the gum and become impacted, and they frequently have to be surgically removed before they can do any real damage. This is not a design flaw exactly. It is a timing problem that evolution has not caught up with yet. Our ancestors needed a full set of powerful molars. They were eating raw meat, unprocessed plant material, fibrous tubers, and tough grains, food that required serious grinding to break down. They were also losing teeth earlier in life due to wear and limited dental care, so having extra molars arrive in early adulthood was genuinely useful. A fresh set of back teeth in your 20s was a meaningful biological advantage. Today, we cook food, cut it into manageable pieces, and take much better care of our teeth, meaning by the time wisdom teeth arrive, the rest of the set is still intact and fully occupying the available space. Jaws have also gradually gotten smaller as diets have softened. There is less developmental pressure to grow a large jaw when you are not spending hours a day chewing tough material. The result is a jaw that can no longer reliably accommodate 4 extra teeth. And here is the part that suggests evolution is actively working on this problem right now. The percentage of people born without wisdom teeth entirely is increasing with each generation. In some populations, it is already approaching 40%. The wisdom tooth is not just useless. It is actively being phased out in real time. You can practically watch it happening. Number 2, the auricular muscles. Most people cannot move their ears. A small percentage can, and if you are one of them, you have almost certainly deployed this skill exactly once at a party to mild applause before the conversation moved on. The auricular muscles are 3 small muscles attached to the outer ear, and their original job was to move the ear independently to track sounds. If you have ever watched a cat or a dog rotate an ear toward a noise without turning its head, you have seen this system working as intended. It is genuinely useful for an animal operating in an environment where sound localization can mean the difference between eating and being eaten. Humans evolved away from that need. We started turning our heads instead. We developed better visual scanning. The ear rotating system gradually became vestigial. And today, the auricular muscles in most people are functionally dormant. The neural pathway exists. The muscles exist. But the connection between intent and movement simply does not fire. A few people can still do it, either through some quirk of genetic variation or, in rare cases, through deliberate practice. The world record for fastest ear wiggling belongs to a man named Alano Martin Baiju from India, who can wiggle his ears 99 times in 30 seconds. That is faster than most people can deliberately blink, an impressive achievement for a muscle with no remaining biological purpose whatsoever. Number 1, the sinuses. This is where things get genuinely interesting and not in a satisfying way. The sinuses are a series of air-filled cavities inside your skull, behind your forehead, your cheekbones, your nose, and your eyes. You almost certainly know they exist because at some point they got infected and made you feel like your face was being slowly pressurized from the inside. But here's the thing about sinuses that earns them the #1 spot. Scientists are not entirely sure why we have them, not in the vague, hand-wavy sense. In the specific, peer-reviewed, ongoing debate sense. Several competing hypotheses exist, and none has fully won the argument. One theory is that the sinuses help humidify and warm incoming air before it reaches the lungs, a kind of built-in climate control for your respiratory system. Another is that they make the skull lighter, reducing the structural load on the neck and spine that would otherwise come with supporting a very large brain. A third theory suggests they play a role in the immune system, producing mucus that traps bacteria and pathogens before they travel deeper into the body. Each of these explanations has supporting evidence. None is considered definitively proven. There is also the uncomfortable possibility that the sinuses are simply a structural byproduct of how the human skull evolved, a side effect of bone arrangement rather than a feature with a clear purpose. Evolution does not always produce elegant solutions. Sometimes it produces a face full of connected air pockets that occasionally fill with fluid and ruin your entire week. What we do know is this: people with naturally smaller sinuses tend to get fewer sinus infections, which suggests that from a health standpoint, less sinus is more. Some researchers believe the sinuses are very slowly shrinking across the human population over evolutionary time, but slowly is doing enormous work in that sentence. We are talking thousands upon thousands of years. Your sinuses are not going anywhere in any timeline relevant to you or anyone you will ever meet. For now, they remain mysterious, occasionally painful, and stubbornly unexplained. That is all for today. Subscribe if you want to see more videos like this one. There are plenty more strange corners of the human body left to explore.